So it's Christmas Eve, and what better time to replace your spark plugs? Got the day off, and you got a little extra money in your pocket, so why not, hey, do a tune-up on your Jeep and replace the spark plugs. So I'm doing a spark plug change on the Jeep JK. This is a 2010 Jeep JK, and went online, didn't find very many blogs or videos for changing out the spark plug wires on this 3.8 liter V6, but I think we can make one here. As you can see, this 6-cylinder has got pretty easy access to number 2, 4, and 6 spark plugs, but it's pretty difficult to get to number 1, 3, and 5. So I figured I'd start with number 5, the hardest one, first, and get that out of the way. And I pulled that bad boy out. All it took was a couple of extensions, an articulated tip, and breaker bar, which I've got a decent breaker bar here. That wasn't too hard. The biggest thing was cleaning up the engine compartment first, making sure that all the dirt was off. And as you can see, I got a pretty clean engine compartment, regardless of the age of the Jeep. But the important thing was getting these hoses and all the appurtenances around the spark plugs clean before I did the work. I didn't want anything to fall in there, any dirt or dust. So the best thing to use is wet wipes. I have a pack of wet wipes, and I go through there and wipe down everything real quick before I get to work on it. But as you can see down here, there's a clip that I had to remove on the hoses. This clip here was holding these two hoses down, and then there's a spark plug wire bridge back here. If you can see that, there's a spark plug wire bridge. I just pulled that right off the bolt. There's 3 retainers that hold it on. They just slide right off. And of course, this clip just came right off. All I did was take a screwdriver and pry that off. Came out easy. I used a 5/8 spark plug socket and articulated couple, and that made it easy. I also have an articulated tip on the 3/8 inch drive. So if you put that together, with the articulated couple, it can get into just about anywhere, which it did. I saw some posts online that they had gone in through the wheel well, but you'd have to take your inner fender out, and I looked at it, and it looked like it'd be pretty easy to get to without doing all that. I just pulled this hose out of the air filter to get that out of the way, and once I got that and these other cables and hoses out of the way, it was easy to get to. Of course, I pulled all the spark plug wire boots off as I went. The spark plug order, the wiring order, is written right on the pack, and you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. They're all labeled. So what I'm doing is I'm labeling these spark plugs as I pull them out, so I can inspect them and I can tell if I'm having any problems with my cylinders. But this spark plug is about 30,000 miles old. It doesn't look too bad. Looks like it might have a little bit of fouling on the tip there. it's not that bad. I'm replacing the plugs with brand new Autolite Iridiums XP. They were $6.95 each. Kind of high for spark plugs, but they have these iridium tips on there. They're supposed to last a little longer. We'll see. I figured I wasn't going to skimp on spark plugs. There was some more expensive spark plugs out there, like Bosch Platinums, but I don't know how long they'll last. I've had different outcomes with Bosch plugs in the past, so kind of inconsistent. I was referred to try these Autolites out by my favorite mechanic, and the guys at the auto parts store said they'd go buy them too. I originally was going to get AC Delco, but they were sold out. So this is a one-man operation, but it's really not that difficult to get to these spark plugs. Getting them out can be challenging if you don't have a breaker bar. So, as I was saying before, it's key getting those hoses out of the way. Get that spark plug socket seated on there really good, because there's a rubber gasket in there. So I'll give it a try with the ratchet. Man, it's too hard. I'll have to get out the breaker bar like I did on the last one. Makes it a whole lot easier. I got a decent breaker bar here. That'll get it off. Breaker bar does the trick every time. That loosened it right up. So I just take that breaker bar off. Ratchet this bad boy right out. Once you move those hoses, pull those spark plug wires out of the way, it's really not a problem. Get those spark plugs out of there. Unless, of course, the last guy who changed them didn't put anti-seize on them. So I'll put some anti-seize on these new plugs before I put them in there. And I'll put dielectric grease in the spark plug wire connections. I'm just going to reuse these spark plug wires and see how good a performance I get out of the new plugs first, and eliminate those eliminate any variables and see how these new plugs do. And if I get a noticeable change, I might go ahead and replace the spark plug wires and see if I get any boost in performance. But this by hand. That way I'm assured they don't break anything. plug, and you can see it's got some fouling on it. Not a whole lot, but you can tell it's aged, and it's probably best to replace them. I'll label that one. Back and take a closer look at all of them later. I want to get them all out. If it looks like I got some inconsistencies, it'll be a lot easier to tell. So the number 1 spark plug, as you can see, is a lot easier to get to. You can see it really easy. There we go. Set that bad boy in there. Not always easy to do with one hand, but if you're a semi-experienced mechanic, you can pull it off. See if I can pull off loosening this bad boy up with just one hand. Nope. I have to get out the breaker bar for this one too. Deal. Take care of that. Tell you, having the articulated couple and the articulated tip combined at the same time sure does make this job a lot easier. I highly recommend it. You don't have to struggle for the correct angle. Just keep it as straight as you possibly can. And of course, anytime you're adding extensions, it reduces the torque. But fortunately, the last guy who came in here and did these didn't over torque them. Specs call for about 20 foot-pounds of torque, or about a quarter turn. But it probably take less than that. You don't want to get too torque in there. Otherwise, they're almost impossible to get out. You break them. Yeah, this is an easy one. This plug, this is number 1 plug. It looks pretty consistent with the other two. Not too heavily fouled, not broken or anything. That's good. So I'll label that guy, put him with the rest. plugs now. They all look to have the same type of wear on them. They don't look fuel fouled or oil fouled. They just look, you know, burned just from normal usage. So on to the easy side. As you can see, number 2, 4, and 6 are pretty readily accessible. Not going to have too much of an issue getting those out or replacing them. So I'll just go ahead and pull these spark plug cables out. Just a little tug's all it takes. It's easy to remember which one is which because they're factory wires and they're sized exactly. Okay. I'll wipe those off too while I'm at it. And the wet wipes do a good job on those. They're pretty handy. Wet wipes. And I just like to clean everything up while I'm at it. See here. Keep everything looking kind of new. Makes it go faster, right? It's nice they label these wires. It's hard to get them mixed up when they're all labeled. This is number 2, obviously. It's easy to tell which one is which. Much better. Get those out of the way. Those out. Now some guys mount their air compressor right here in this spot. Right here is where they mount the air compressor. So if you have an air compressor, you'll most likely have to remove that altogether to get to these ones. But as you can see, these are the easy ones. Okay, so back to the spark plugs. So this is cylinder 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I've got 1, 3, and 5 removed. I'm going to go ahead and take out numbers 2, 4, and 6. And these ones are pretty straightforward. A lot easier to get access to these than any of the other ones. Been pretty consistent. It's been taking a breaker bar to get all of them out. So I got the breaker bar on there. I got a good angle on it. The less angle you have on it, the better. So these come out a lot easier than the other side. Number 4, and it looks pretty much like the rest of them, just a little burned. Lots of room. Lots of room makes it for a much easier job. This is number 2. Get smart, just go straight for the breaker this time. Number 6, pretty consistent. Got a little bit of rust around the outside of the spark plug. Probably from riding it on the beach where all that salt water is in the air. I don't see any major oil fouling or fuel fouling in here, so I think they've come to their useful service life. Okay, so we've got everything we need here to put the new spark plugs in. I've got some dielectric grease right here and some anti-seize lubricant, spark plug gapper, and got a brand new set of Autolite iridiums and torque wrench set at 12 pounds as per specs. And the gap for these plugs is supposed to be 0.05, so we'll gap those. We'll gap them all before we stick them in there and get her done. Okay, so just gonna gap this real quick. 0.05. Doesn't need a whole lot of anti-seize on there. Okay, so I put a little little anti-seize on there, and it's gapped. This is the number 6 cylinder. And you just gotta Be careful when you're threading it in there. Always hand thread it in there to start it. Be careful not to cross thread it. Gotta finesse it. Wiggle it a little bit. Okay, so I'm putting in the last spark plug here. Got anti-seize on all of them. This is the number 5 cylinder. It's the toughest one. But if you get that bracket unattached from the valve cover, you can get in there and hand thread it in there. Can't see it, but you can feel it. And I think that's about it. But they give you enough room to stick your hand in there, and I got big hands and I can make it. So I'm going to go ahead and tighten them up. I got a 5/8 inch spark plug socket and an articulated connector, and a ratchet with some extensions. Go ahead and get your number 6. Hand tighten it. Don't want to accidentally strip them or break them. So go ahead and take the ratchet off and put the torque wrench on there. Set for 12 foot-pounds of torque.
I can sound like this.
There we go. So that takes care of all 3 on the driver's side. I got my little helper Emily here with me.
Good night, like Daddy.
You daddy's little helper.
And I usually have to pull these out with a needle nose to get this spark plug socket out of there. Alright, so I've got all of them threaded in on the passenger side now. So I'm going to go in here and hand tighten them with the spark plug socket. Just weasel my way around these hoses. So now I got it good and snug by hand. I'll get out. Articulate it. Stick that in there. Make some big tricky one. Ease my way back in there. My big fat hands. I can feel the spark plug tip with my pinky. Trying to get this spark plug socket seated on there really good. Okay. Put the articulated end back on there. I think when I took this out, I sent this extension behind the wire loop. Okay. Now putting it on. Okay, so that's nice and tight now. This one's a little bit tricky, but I got it in there. There we go. Okay. Hopefully I can get this socket off of here. Okay. Good deal. So I got some dielectric grease here. I'll go ahead and put them inside the cables. Might have to use a Q-tip to get it in there in the right spot. So to get this in here, I'm just going to use one of these. I'm going to use one of these WD-40 tips, tip tubes. That makes it easy for me to get it in there and spread it around. Doesn't have to be real precise, just as long as you get some in there.
Yeah.
Okay, so I've got dielectric grease in all of my spark plug wires now, connections. So just double checking the numbers. There's number 6, number 2, number 4 is down there. Go ahead and push these back in. Push it until you hear it click. You can feel it. Chrysler puts these nice ends on these so you can push on them, which is nice. About out the factory spark plug wires. Makes it easy to push them on. It's easy to double check. Alright, so I'm going to just put these brackets back on here. Holds the hose down. Fits on there right nicely. Put this hose back onto my air cleaner. And that should do it. Start her up and see how good she runs now. Alright, so now we're going to test her out and make sure she's running good. Nice and smooth. A little bit faster throttle is fine. I like it. Yeah, so that was a pretty good install. Took a little longer than I thought. Of course, videotaping with one hand was making it take a little longer. So I enlisted the help of my wonderful assistant, Amber. Thank you, Amber.
You're welcome, babe.
And hope that video helps you out if you have to change your spark plugs in your Jeep JK. Hope this makes it a little smoother. Thanks again for checking out my video. Well, I gotta say that worked out pretty good. Took the Jeep on a test drive and performance was right there. I think those iridium plugs are gonna work out nice. And the Jeep is running much better. And tune-up went well. If anybody out there is interested in replacing their spark plugs on the Jeep, can't think of a better time than right now. As we say in the mechanic world, that was a one beer project. So all my friends out there on the internet, happy Jeeping and Merry Christmas.